Hey, this is Katie and Catherine, and we're here to give you the 411K. Cheers!
This week, the 411K talked with Nikki Wells. Nikki Wells has over 10 years of experience working with college students and young professionals in academic and postgraduate settings. After undergraduate, Nikki went straight into a master's program and graduated from the University of Buffalo in 2007 with her educational master's in higher education administration, with roughly $43,000 in education loan. She's on track to pay it off by 2020. She hates talking about money, but we are so excited to have Nikki on to answer some questions related to grad school. This week, our question is, I'm in my mid-20s and working full-time, and I'm exploring the idea of going back to school to get my MBA. But there are so many questions to tackle. I feel like everyone at the next level at my office has one. Do I need one? Do I want one? Is now the time to do it while I have no family responsibilities? Should I take 2 years off to go back full-time? Is full-time better than part-time? If I go part-time, my company may pay for some, but not all. Should I be taking out student loans for this? Are there other ways to pay? So let's tackle it, piece by piece. I guess the first part would be, is graduate school necessary, or is an MBA necessary?
So I would say in general, it really depends on the field that you're in. There are certain fields where, yes, graduate school is 100% necessary. Take medicine, for example. I would definitely want my doctor to have completed all of the years of graduate school training to have the knowledge and skills to be able to provide good medical care. Any type of profession where you need a license to practice, it also may depend on the state that you live in. Sometimes teachers in K through 12 education may be required to complete grad school at some point after undergrad. Certain states may, require different levels of graduate school as well. Sometimes you could stop at a master's and be set. Other times, depending on how far your ambitions go, you may need what's called a terminal degree, something like a JD for law or a PhD. That kind of that's that top level degree where, you've reached the epitome of being an expert in that field, and it is necessary in order for you to advance. When I'm thinking about an MBA, it's kind of a personal choice. It's, when you're thinking about comparing yourself to people that you might be aspiring to have their positions, when you're thinking about advancing your career, you want to look at the credentials of the people who are supervising you, or maybe their supervisors, and seeing what they have. And sometimes the MBA is necessary. Other times it's not. It also kind of depends on what sector you're in. I think that you see a lot of people take time off from undergrad before pursuing grad school, just to kind of get an idea of if going to grad school is really going to be for them and if it's really necessary. And MBA programs like to see some type of full-time experience before going into their program. So, they want to have their students have, it used to be 5 years. Now I think, a lot of MBA programs are being a little bit more flexible. Maybe now it's 2 years or 3 years of full-time professional experience before starting an MBA, so that when you're in the classroom, you can take some of that hands-on experience that you've been learning in your positions into what you're learning in the classroom.
This might just be, the different industries that I've seen and worked in, but it also seems like there's a lot of certifications out there that might be comparable to an MBA. If you didn't want to go that track, a CFA or a CPA might actually accomplish the same goal versus getting an MBA. I mean, I am a horrible test taker, and I don't think I could undergo the stress of a CFA exam.
Same.
Yeah. Would you say that that's kind of your experience?
Yes, absolutely. I think that there are so many alternatives to that traditional education of going to grad school for a specific, master's degree. Certifications are certainly a growing area. At the institution where I work right now, we offer in some fields what's called a Master of Professional Studies, which is more of an accelerated type of master's program that doesn't necessarily involve a lot of the research and writing of a thesis that other traditional master's programs have. It's more of a practical base, get a taste of the advanced degree, have another credential to put on your resume to talk about your advanced skills and knowledge in that area, but it's not the same type of investment in time that maybe a more traditional master's or PhD program might take you. Now, some of them will not come with funding, and we can talk about funding a little bit later. So they are very appealing as far as how they're structured curriculum-wise, and the fact that, you could be done in a year to a year and a half, but it may cost a little bit more to do those. And sometimes universities will use those type of programs as a revenue generator. So the university may not give you a lot of money to help you pay for it. That may need to come from loans or like an employee type of reimbursement program that the company might offer.
Catherine, you have your MBA, correct?
No, I do not have an MBA. I did my master's in a specific subject in organizational psychology. That was the subject that interested me most. I knew it was the direction loosely that I wanted my career to go in. And there were a number of courses that I looked at in the MBA course listing that I felt like they felt like those gen eds that I took in my undergrad that I was less interested in. And I felt like that program gave me a deeper dive into the real subject matter and content that I was interested in. And it was cheap as chips. I did my master's in London part-time while working full-time. Even as a U.S. citizen, so a non-European Union citizen, the exact same program, had I done it in the U.S., would have cost me $90,000. And at the University of London, it was about $23,000 over the 2 years part-time. And I was almost able to pay it off within a few years.
Would you say it was a want or a need for you?
It was a want, as opposed to law school, which I had originally thought was a need. And then I worked in law firms and saw that I didn't want the life of a corporate or a criminal lawyer. I felt like I had had that exploration in the working world, as Nikki alluded to, that had I not, I potentially could have gone to law school.
And I think, Nikki, you touched on it. The schools probably want to see you have work experience before you go back, but it's also helpful for you before just jumping into a program.
Absolutely. You kind of have to figure out who you are as a person outside of school, because after you graduate undergrad, we are definitely seeing more students that have taken a little bit of time off between high school and college, but not too many still. And so you have this crop of fresh graduates that don't really know who they are as a person outside of the life of being a student. Taking that time and going out to explore the world of work, explore what roles they do or don't want to play, either in an office setting or on some type of team in the professional workplace, and then kind of ascertaining from there, oh yeah, I really liked that atmosphere of academia and being on a college campus and taking that deep dive, like Catherine said. Graduate school is all about focusing in, sometimes with laser precision, on one topic, one area in which you are going to become an expert. And that's all you study. And so you really have to have a good understanding of this is going to be your life for a particular period of time. And you have to make sure you've got the space in your life, your personal life and your professional life, if you're going to work while you go to grad school, as well as, the time to really dedicate to doing all of the reading. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of working on group projects, with other people who might be in your cohort or in your classes. So it really kind of has to be a higher level of dedication.
I saw an article in the Washington Post that had said that the most successful programs were programs that had added that concentration path or some sort of flexible pathway where, maybe you get a master's in just finance and it's only a year versus 2 or 3 for a full MBA.
And it's hard to think about as women about when to go to grad school, especially for women in the sciences. A lot of research has shown that women will start their paths down PhDs in the sciences and then drop out because they start families or, they're taken in a different direction, and then coming back to it is really, really difficult. And so when you're thinking about, if I'm in my mid-20s, I don't have any attachments, I'm relatively free to be able to do what I want. Now might be a good time. That's fine. If you've got the time and the space to do it, go ahead. But if you'd rather wait and kind of see where your life is going to take you, that's fine too. People of all ages go to grad school. There were women in their 40s with kids who were in my graduate program. And then there was me who was 22, fresh out of undergrad. And we all brought different life experiences to the table when we were in the classroom. But you just have to kind of be mindful of, your life is also unpredictable. it's okay to stop a program if you think that it's either not going to be for you or you need to just take a pause, go take care of some personal stuff, and then come back. But I think as women, we are often thinking about other things in our life that are going to take the time away. And so we're tempted to kind of get it out of the way early so that we can just kind of get the credential done under our belt, and then we can kind of move on with career and family and anything else that might come after.
Yeah, I love that example, Nikki. I remember in my master's program required you to work in
Mine
order
did too.
to join. So that was kind of like one of the major prerequisites. And I was one of the younger people in the program at the age of 26, 27. And I was actually in a group with one woman who is in her 60s. And again, when you look at the price tag, it does start to feel like a luxury that only some people can participate in. I know, Katie, you've gone through this, taking the plunge and making that decision to go back and get an MBA.
About to wrap up my first year in school. I'm in a part-time program, so working full-time, taking 2 classes at night. But it's very funny. I can tell the classes where they've mixed the part-time people with the full-time people because the average age of the class is, very young. And there's a lot of people that went right in after graduating. And then the mostly part-time classes are that older. I might be one of the younger people in that class at 27. And there's definitely a group of us where we're probably just getting married. We just got promoted, probably late 20s. And then there's another group in the part-timers that they have kids. It's really encouraging to know that the part-time program allows for that flexibility. I'm in a situation also where my company pays a certain amount per year. So it actually is more advantageous for me to take my time versus just get it done to get the certification. When I graduated or grad, I was like, who knows when you take 2 years off to go back to school, and that opportunity cost of giving up your salary while also taking on loans. So I know we're going to talk about paying for all of this stuff. What is your experience, full-time versus part-time? Does it make a difference? Obviously, I made my choice for part-time because that worked for me.
Well, I think you kind of hit on the head of the opportunity cost, because if you're in a full-time program, that's 40 hours a week that you're going to spend not working. You want to look for a full-time program that may requires to have work, or mine offered assistantship positions at the university. So I had a part-time job on campus in an office that was related to my field. My degree is in student affairs, so I worked in the career services office for 2 years for about 20 hours a week, and I received a small stipend and a tuition waiver. And so even though I wasn't working full-time, while I was going to school, I was still getting some benefit there. But I think for a lot of people, part-time is really, really appealing, and it's very, very doable. Taking 1 or 2 grad courses isn't like taking 1 or 2 classes in undergrad. They are long hours. For mine, we were in class for 2.5 hours. It was mostly like from 4 p.m. to almost 10. We were on campus and in class. It's a lot to manage to go full-time and work even part-time. So a lot of time, the part-time option is really great. Now, it takes a little bit longer, but if you're working at the same time and you're able to meet whatever type of financial obligations you have and then balance that with 1 or 2 grad classes at a time, that's a great way to approach it.
There are definitely benefits of going full-time, especially if you're making a big career change. It's a great networking tool. Also, there's a lot more speakers that are coming on campus at 4 p.m. that I just can't get to after work. But I know that the full-timers utilize that a lot to network and apply for new jobs in the industries that they're interested in going into.
Yeah, I've often thought that MBA and master's programs, the biggest draw to them is that network, because it's one of the last times after college that you have the opportunity to work with people, but in a bit of a, in that case study format. It's, the tension isn't as high as the people you work with in your day job. The stakes aren't as high. It's a great opportunity to try things and practice and learn from each other. And people tend to be really open-minded and forthcoming, and it can really breed a certain energy and spirit that I think you actually can't put a price tag on.
You say that they can't put a price tag on that. I would say that's wrong. Because they put a price tag on that.
Ka-ching!
So let's actually get into this. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but
It's my understanding that, some full-time programs, at least in the Boston area, BC, BU, MIT, Harvard, it could easily be $200,000 to go full-time. I know my part-time program is going to eventually cost me $75,000. Let's talk about the price tag on these MBAs.
I think it's the number one factor in the decision-making process of where to go. Once you've made the decision to go, that's the next thing to think about. There was an article in Forbes where the New America Foundation's average debt for grad students is about $57,600, and 1 in 4 people take out $100,000 or more. That is a staggering amount of money. There are certainly lots of ways to fund your advanced degree. Employment programs that we've kind of talked about, like there's the opportunities for assistantships. So maybe it's teaching or research that will come with a stipend, but oftentimes it's just really enough to pay for the education, which is, tuition, books, other fees. But then there's the whole cost of supporting yourself and keeping yourself alive, basically. So when I went to school in Buffalo, my tuition was taken care of, but even in Buffalo with Buffalo prices, which is pretty cheap comparable to where you guys are, I still knew that I needed more to cover just my cost of living. I had a car payment. I was paying rent for the very first time in my life. I needed a professional wardrobe because I was working on campus. It was during the early days of cell phone usage, so I had a cell phone plan. So I had all these extra expenses that I didn't have to worry about because I lived on campus. I had a meal plan. My mom paid for my textbooks, I was living the life, and now I was on my own. So I found that extra way to supplement the cost of my education was through federal loans. If you decide to go the federal loan route, just because they offer you a financial aid package doesn't mean you have to take all of it. And that is something that I didn't really realize. So at 21, 22 years old, I was so bad at making financial decisions for myself because I just hadn't needed to until that point. So when I was awarded $18,000 for a year, I was like, okay, fine, I'll take it. Knowing in the back of my mind that I was going to have to pay it back. But when you're 22, you're not really that was not something I was thinking about. But I definitely took out way too much. So after my grace period was over, after I graduated, I got my first payment came due, and I was shocked at how high that payment was. And I shouldn't have been. So you've got to sit down, look at what they're offering you, look at what that gap is going to be between what's already being taken care of as far as the cost goes, and kind of see where that gap is between that and your cost of living. And then only take out what you need and what you can pay back. Biggest lesson that I learned. And I paid off that grad school loan a year and a half ago. And boy, it felt like winning the lottery. It was the best.
Congratulations.
It was the best feeling. Well, and the other thing you have to think about when it's coming time to repay your loans is that most of what you're paying for the majority of the time is interest. So even though they're offering you $18,000, you are not going to be paying them just that $18,000. It's going to be much more. When it comes to thinking about the type of loans to take out, there are some things to keep in mind. There's a lot of controversy, a lot of media coverage about loan interest rates. Federal loans are still very low interest rates comparable to private loans. So if you have private loans, I would really recommend you pay them off first because those interest rates are high and they are not fixed. The bank can decide to adjust that interest rate at any time, and it's usually up.
I think something that people don't really know is that you can also start paying off your student loans before you get a bill in the mail. You get a bill in the mail 6 months after you're done with school or take a break from school. So if you're in a part-time program and you decide to take that pause or that break, you're going to get a bill 6 months after the last class that you took. But you can pay off that loan at any time during the course of your schooling. And so, if you are really bad at, keeping money in a savings account and having it just sit there, just put it against your loans right away. And you don't even have to think about it.
What are the current, what's today's interest rate on a federal student loan?
Yeah, the interest rate right now for federal loans is about 4.81% for undergrads. If you take out graduate federal loans, it's about 6.38%.
I do remember being surprised by that when I went for my master's. They do prioritize lending to undergraduate programs to make sure that we're spreading out the opportunity, whereas the master's and for additional degrees are considered secondary, not maybe 100% a necessity. So there's actually less in that bucket to even work with. You can't even assume that just because you got a lot for undergrad that you'll get the same amount or for a graduate program.
The other thing to keep in mind is that there is no limit on how much you can borrow on federal graduate loans. They do limit you for undergrad, but they do not for graduate school. There is a resource that I think could come in really handy. There's an ROI calculator for grad school. Basically, you can enter in certain variables like your cost of living, average salaries that people in your particular field that have a graduate degree would be making, and you can kind of enter those in, and it will kind of give you some sort of idea of when you could start to see the return on that investment in grad school. Then kind of factoring in the fact that, yes, you might get an increased salary, but you may be paying back some loans. So when are you actually going to see some of that payoff? So that's where you kind of have to step back and try to take a 30,000 foot view of your situation holistically. If you have a partner, this is a decision you need to make with them. Sit down with them and get their advice and their perspective too, because this is a huge decision to make, and making it on your own can be really tough.
It really resonates with me because I was in a position of exploring my master's just before getting engaged and getting married. My husband's from another country. He's from Europe. Education is fully subsidized there. So I had a real challenging discussion, or multiple challenging discussions with him when we were discussing the possibility of me returning to school, because the concept of borrowing money to learn was completely foreign to him. Coming at it from my American lens of, oh, 90,000 for grad school, that's not bad. He was like, hold on a second. We should explore other options for you.
I used to do a workshop on international careers and education as an American going abroad and having international experiences. And grad school was definitely one of those options that you could take. And I think a lot of young people are very interested in pursuing education abroad just because of the price tag. It's not going to be free as a non-citizen unless you do have dual citizenship. And some people are really lucky to be in that situation where they could do that. But as an American going abroad for an advanced degree in general, relatively speaking, it is much cheaper.
And you have the added benefit of maybe living in another culture, learning a language.
Oh, certainly.
What about the Harvard Extension School? So I've seen huge influx of these courses that are now popping up. Originally, it was random places around the U.S. that were offering these online courses and extension schools. And then Harvard, MIT, and some of the other Ivy Leagues have jumped on that bandwagon. What do you think is a way of looking at something like these extension school programs, and how can you make them work for you?
So online programs, because I know I was looking at that a little bit. I could go to the University of Chicago online and be in Boston working full time.
I mean, online learning has come so far, so far, but there's still, kind of depending on who you talk to, there still might be a little bit of stigma around earning a degree online. As long as it's an accredited program, you shouldn't have any problem finding something that will work for you. The biggest thing to consider is how you learn, and how do you learn best. I know I'm a classroom learner. Self-directed online education is definitely not the learning environment in which I thrive. I like to have that in-person interaction and to be in a classroom. And an online program offers even more flexibility. Again, as long as it's accredited, you're still earning a degree. It's becoming more and more acceptable in certain fields to have a degree from an online university. Even if it's a brick and mortar campus, like getting a degree from the University of Chicago online, it would still reflect that on a transcript that it was through the online. Online education doesn't throw up as many red flags as it used to.
I was talking to a friend and I asked, how did getting your MBA get you to the next level? She was a huge advocate for the part-time program because you're applying things as you're learning them. She said people would start to notice how she would speak differently and she would have more of a management style. But it's not like I'm going to graduate with my MBA and show up to work and suddenly have a new job title or a higher salary. So how do you take something like an MBA or a certification and actually apply them to taking the next step in your career?
That comes down to having good conversations with your supervisor about ways to enhance your role. Now that you have this new set of skills, you've gone through this transformative experience and you're ready to take it to the next level. That's a conversation with your supervisor or your team leader, or whoever it is. Going in prepared to talk about the justifications for why you want to take on maybe some additional responsibilities. You can always use it as a negotiation tool in your next performance review or in your next request for a raise, but you have to ask for it. And then just take initiative to find something to do on your own too. You don't have to wait to ask for permission. You could just start doing it. And at your next supervisory meeting, let them know what you've been doing. And if it's something that might be outside the scope of your job description or something that might warrant a conversation about a pay increase, come to the table with all of your bargaining chips.
When we talk about the cost of the degree program and the benefits that it could bring to you, I remember I had a discussion with a peer in my company who had just been recruited in and had come out of an MBA program. He was making substantially more than I was. Same job title. We actually worked on a team together. We're doing exactly the same work. Why is he earning more than me? As MBA students have a bit of an advantage, right? They get a bigger signing bonus and their base is a little bit higher. The next layer in that conversation is that we were talking about our financial situations, as my overall student loans will be paid off in 3 more years or something. And he is going to be paying off his student loans forever. Who actually is going to be better off in the end? I wish someone had told me when I was doing my master's or exploring and considering an MBA program to actually work backwards and say, okay, this is what I think I'll be earning, but is the cost actually going to justify it? I may be earning more, but if I'm going to be paying it off and paying it off at a crazy interest rate or with ridiculous fees or whatever over a course of many, many years, am I actually going to be better off? Because often we look at that final price tag. Okay, it's going to cost us much, but I'm going to be earning that much more.
That is a really, really good illustration of how there's no recipe that's going to get you from point A to point B in any of this. And so it's just going to look different for everybody's situation. Even if you're in the same program, the same classes, the same city, looking at the same jobs, or even working for the same company. It is not something that I was ever counseled about from any of my mentors when I was considering graduate school. The exam significantly. I think the biggest takeaway is grad school is it's a rewarding experience if it's something that is really for you. And I'm so glad that I did it. I would do it all over again. I would probably just do it a little bit more wisely. It was definitely the right fit for me. It sounds like, Katie, you're having a good experience in your program. And if you're listening and you're thinking, I still don't know, then you should probably wait until you really do know.
Oh, Nikki, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the 411K. Tune in for more podcasts and follow us on Instagram at _411K. Cheers!